Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Really excited to be here with you and my colleagues, Amanda, who's a product marketing manager for ITSM, Vincent, who's a principal product manager for ITSM, and Jason, who can't be here with us today because he may or may not be a first-time dad. We're not entirely sure, but he'll be joining us via a recorded video and a demo. So thank you all for spending, I guess, part of your lunch hour with us, and we're going to dive into a few things that can help you make better decisions for IT service management with analytics. So we have a few things we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through what Atlassian Analytics is. We're going to go through some common use cases about dashboards that you can use across service, change, incident management. We'll talk a little bit about additional functionality, some of the out-of-the-box features that you get with Atlassian Analytics. And then Vincent is going to talk a little bit about what's next? What's the future for data at Atlassian? You might have seen a lot about, we're thinking about how we combine data at Atlassian to make better decisions for customers. And then we'll open it up to a Q&A at the end. And if we don't answer any of your questions, please come to us after and we can talk to you about them. So I'm really excited because I've been working on this for a while, but Atlassian Analytics is officially GA, and we announced that yesterday. So this is really big news for us and a lot of the customers that have been using it. If you were at Team 22, you might have seen us announce Atlassian Analytics then as well. And so we've been in beta for about a year. We've scaled up our customers. Now we have about 100 plus, close to 200 customers on Cloud Enterprise using Atlassian Analytics. If anyone in the room has been using it in beta, thank you so much. We've really made a lot of adjustments, edits, and improvements to get it ready for general availability. So I want to talk a little bit about the data foundations at Atlassian, and again, this is mainly context, but we've had different layers of data between our projects. You can imagine when we were just Jira Software and Jira Service Management and Confluence, there were kind of three products that you needed to get data from and create reporting for. And now as we expand into new products and Point A, Beacon, et cetera, we've really found it a mission of ours to be able to pull that data all together. So we've had contextual insights and in-product dashboards for a while. And these are great for sprint level reporting, for reporting against key projects, and these are great for individual teams, but what they haven't really been able to do is, if you want data across Jira Software, Jira Service Management, and other tools, hasn't been a centralized place to get that. And so that's why we acquired a company called Chartio a few years ago, and we've been working to integrate it into the Atlassian platform. And that visualization layer that we announced yesterday as GA is Atlassian Analytics. All of this sits upon the Atlassian Data Lake, which essentially houses a lot of our cloud product data, starting with Jira Software, Jira Service Management, including asset and configuration data, and Opsgenie incident data, as well as other Jira products like Jira Work Management, Jira Product Discovery, and just now we've included Confluence data as part of the lake. So really we're spanning across IT, dev, and business teams when it comes to the data that's hosted in the lake. And you might have seen we have this data export functionality that we've been talking about. We know that enterprises especially like to analyze data outside of certain tools, so we're releasing that over the next coming quarters so that you can take the data, your Atlassian data, and analyze it in other tools outside of Atlassian as well. So just quickly wanted to touch on a little bit about why we built Atlassian Analytics, and three of the key themes that kept coming up amongst conversations with all of you and our customers is basically there's a lot of Atlassian data. You have a lot of users using Jira Software, Jira Service Management, and what do you do with that data? How do you make those processes better? And one of the main themes was individual teams having access to their own reporting. So rather than having dedicated analyst resources looking into reports, requesting a dashboard, waiting for 2 weeks, and then having to kind of make that dashboard an executive-facing thing, Atlassian Analytics kind of unlocks engineering managers, service leaders, service operations managers to actually look at their own reports and fix those situations, whether it's velocity or service issues, directly from those reports. The other one is mapping the value stream. So if you've thought about your entire development process and service process and delivering values to customers, being able to look at some of those dashboards like flow metrics, DORA metrics, VSM dashboards, and map those development outcomes. And then finally, you might have seen Dish Network talked about this in the video in the opening keynote, but we're really focused on connecting the Atlassian data lake directly to analytics so that you get more real-time access to that data. And that real-time access to that data really means if you update a Jira ticket, in 20, 30 minutes, you'll see that reflected in a dashboard in analytics. So rather than waiting 8, 10 hours for things to update, it's right there. So that's kind of the promise that we're looking for in terms of Atlassian Analytics. This is a view. We'll go into kind of more of the product later, but the other thing I mentioned was empowering individual teams, and I'm not a data analyst. I have a SQL certification, but I can't say that I'm very good at it. And so I use Atlassian Analytics by looking at these template dashboards for Jira Software, Jira Service Management, Confluence, as well as using some of the chart builder capabilities and templates to kind of get those out-of-the-box insights. And this is just kind of one view of what you see when you log into Atlassian Analytics. So Amanda's going to talk a little bit about some use cases.
All right, so let's talk about Atlassian Analytics for ITSM. Your IT operations and support teams can use these out-of-the-box templates to get a quick look and fix bottlenecks that they're facing, and our out-of-the-box dashboards include request, incident, and change management. Traditional ITSM tools often only give teams half the picture with data from their operations tools. Atlassian Analytics gives teams the full picture with data from both dev and ops tools, providing richer insights and allowing you to make better decisions about incidents and changes. You can also get a quick view of the state of the business with dashboards that track the performance of business services and quarterly trends. So one of our out-of-the-box dashboards is for request management teams, and often these teams are wanting to know whether they're able to give customers help in a timely manner, as well as if customers are satisfied with the help that they've provided. So our dashboard includes out-of-the-box metrics that help answer just these questions, so whether customers are getting help, whether customers are satisfied with the service that your team is providing to them, and then metrics that help gauge the velocity of your team. So how quickly are you responding to and resolving requests? Are you adhering to SLAs? So this is a look at the request management dashboard. As you can see, it has a lot of the things I just talked about: open requests by type, agent workload, how many requests were created and resolved in a specific time period. And with this dashboard, we're aiming to give teams that unified view so that you can continue to make improvements with your request management process and continue providing excellent service to your customers. Another of our out-of-the-box dashboards is for change management. And when you're looking at changes, you want to make sure that you're minimizing risk while continuing to innovate at the pace of the business and not slowing things down. So to do that, you might want to look at how often changes are failing, changes by risk and type, and how long it takes changes to deploy. And so with this dashboard, we're really helping teams get a quick glance into their change management practices. So again, that you can continue to improve, and just deploy with confidence when you're looking at those changes. And then finally, the last dashboard I'm going to talk about is incident management. And we know that when an incident occurs, your main goal is getting service back up to your customers as quickly as possible. So with this dashboard, you can audit your incident management processes and look at things like the volume of incidents trending over time, mean time to resolution, showing how quickly you're able to restore systems to operational status, and how often you're either meeting or breaching your SLAs. So with the metrics on this dashboard, you can see how well you're maintaining uptime to your customers and make sure that you're keeping services always on. Now, we also have some capabilities that allow you to customize your dashboards and charts so that you can make sure that they're meeting your team's needs. We're investing a lot in collaboration because it's not just analysts who need reports. So here's an example. You can use the sidebar on the right to edit dashboards to satisfy your team's needs. You can comment directly on charts, so you can react to the actual data that you're seeing and ask questions if you need to. And you can also add custom reports. We have an interactive Visual SQL Builder that allows you to write your own reports, create your own dashboards, and you'll see a little bit about how this works in the demo from Jason in a few minutes. Sharing capabilities allow you to control who has access to your team's data. And then you can also embed dashboards across Atlassian. So sharing out to your stakeholders, reporting out is easy. For example, you can embed in Confluence pages, Atlas updates, and Trello cards. So now I'm going to hand it over virtually to Jason so he can show you a little bit more about those customization options I mentioned with an asset management use case.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason DeCruz, one of the product managers on JSM, working in the data and analytics space, and I've been involved in the development of Atlassian Analytics from the ground up. Unfortunately, I can't be with you here today at Team 23, so I'm going to virtually present some of our asset reporting capabilities, which I know has been a much awaited feature from a lot of our customers.
Assets, formerly known as Insight, is available for JSM Premium and Enterprise subscriptions. It's a database of anything you want and allows you to map things together in Jira Service Management. In fact, it's so flexible that some customers use it to map their hardware assets and software services, others to map users, employees, and customers, or even licenses and patch levels. In addition to managing any kind of assets, you can also create relationships between them, which gives you additional context and really brings out the power of the tool. To quickly talk about the assets mental model, you have a schema, which is a collection of asset types. You have asset types, which are groups of similar assets. And you have the individual asset, which is a single unique thing, as well as attributes, which are pieces of information that is attached to an asset, which may be an asset itself. As an example, we can look at the employees' asset types. I've ignored schema for now, but you have employees, which is the asset type, and you have each individual employee, one of which is Abby Cole, which is the individual asset. And you have things like approver, email, job role, location, which are attributes of the asset. Now, Atlassian Analytics allows you to choose the schema and the data that you would like to be able to report on. It gives you the flexibility to choose only certain type of data, as well as control who gets access to the data. It also comes with an out-of-the-box dashboard to help you get started. You can report over certain type of objects and view certain basic charts like objects by attribute, objects created over time, as well as different values. Since this is a bootcamp after all, let's get into some demos on how you actually use the product to get value. Let's look at a simple query on how you can report on your assets data. And this will be using only data from within assets. And what we will do is try to get the number of employees by a particular status, whether they are active, deactivated, or joining soon. So here we pick the attribute value string, and we want a count of objects, so we pick the object ID and then select a count. Now we want to do this for all objects where the asset type is employees. So put that in. And then the attribute needs to be of type status. So for that, we go to the type attribute metadata table and pick the name to be status. Note that this is not using any of Jira issue data, just assets CMDB data. And this generates a pie chart. I'm satisfied with that, so I will create a name and add it to a dashboard. As you can see, we've got some employees, out of which some are active and some are starting soon. I'm creating a new dashboard, and I add these details in. Now let's look at how you can combine assets data with Jira issues and use that in reporting. Start with the Jira issue, a Jira Service Management issue in this case, which has a number of inside fields, like affected services. And for this example, we'll use the employees custom field, which has objects of type employee. You could have multiple objects assigned to a field, but from this example, it's just one type of object. So now we want to get the number of issues by the employee name. So I will select the object label, because that's the name of the employee. And I want a count of the number of issues, which we have in this handy object issue mapping table. Now I want to pick objects only which are a part of a particular field, so I need to know the field name. As we saw previously, that was the field employees with an optional S at the end. Now if you have other objects, you can specify what object type you want over here, but I'm skipping past that. I run the query and I get the answer. I'll just sort it descending and create a bar chart. So we have a number of issues by employee now, and I will add it to the same dashboard. Again, really simple query to write. For our last demo, we'll take a slightly more complicated example where we want to report on an attribute of an object, which happens to be an object itself. In this case, we want to find out number of issues by location, where the location is an attribute of the employee object and location is an object type itself, offices. Now this will be done in 2 queries. So you'll see going forward. So what we will do first is get all the attributes for issues. So we'll do count of unique issues by attribute, and I'll pick the attribute ID. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'll pick an object ID because we know that location is an object. We'll have to map it to the name later. I'll pick the ID and I'll say the field name is employees. So this will return all the attributes by issue. If you really want to narrow it down here, you can put in a condition on attribute name being location, but let's leave that for now. So you've got a list of all the attributes by the number of issues. But these are non-readable terms, so we need to map this out. For that, what we will do is we can add a second query and get that done. So I'm going to add another query now. And now what I want to do in this query is to figure out the names of the locations corresponding to the attribute IDs. To do that, I will pick all of the object IDs because I want to join it with the object IDs from the previous table and pick the label. And here I'll say asset type is offices. So this will give me all the offices and their object IDs in the system. And if I join these 2 queries, I should get only the offices that correspond to issues. Now I need to do a bit of manipulation of the tables. So the first thing I will do is reorder them. And then what I want to do is hide the attribute ID, value ID, because I don't really see the object IDs. And there we have a list of all issues cut by the office, which happens to be an attribute of the employee. And I've created a pie chart, and I'm going to add it again to the dashboard. And we're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, so that's really exciting, especially if you're using, asset and configuration data within Atlassian Analytics. There are a lot of support documents. There's videos that you can take a look at. This is just the tip of the iceberg, issues by office, but objects, attributes that they're related to, mapping them to issues, mapping them to other products as well, like Jira Software, Confluence, knowledge bases, etc. Some really exciting use cases when it comes to assets. But that's also just the tip of the iceberg. You must have seen a few things about how we are thinking about third-party data and external data and open tool chain when it comes to data analysis. So we're really thinking about the connected data foundation that's beyond Atlassian. So you can see here, Atlassian Analytics and Atlassian Data Lake are kind of the core centers of where we want the data to be and visualized. But one of the things we have out of the box, and you can do this if you go into Atlassian Analytics and select your data sources, is yes, you can connect to the Atlassian Data Lake, but you can also connect to over 8 different data warehouses and data sources. So MySQL Server, Postgres, and then most notably, people are using Redshift, BigQuery, Snowflake, and we have a connection with Databricks as well. So you can bring in data from other places that are not just Atlassian. You can bring in pipeline data from Snowflake that may have some Salesforce data connected to it. You can bring in other feature requests, sales data, et cetera, from BigQuery or Redshift as well. And then one thing that we're releasing in the next couple of months, the data is already in the data lake, but if you're using our open tool chain and you're connecting GitHub, deployment data, Sneak data, Circle CI, Pipedream, et cetera, to your Jira instances, that'll be flowing into the data lake, and you can actually query those things. So when it comes to things like deployments and issues and tickets, you can see that all together, and that's kind of one step closer to that overall value stream that I was talking about earlier. This is an example. Wanted to show you kind of some of the use cases that you can do when it comes to connecting third-party data. So a common use case is connecting deployments in Jira stories. So for example, you could track work happening in Jira with deployments coming from GitHub. All the while, you're keeping track of some of those really key engagement metrics, like search relevance score or percentage, that you're pulling in from an AWS database somewhere. Another thing is a leadership team for service management could be tracking deployments of various services and support requests coming into Jira Service Management. How are those related to incidents that you're pulling in from OpsGenie? So the incident-related data is also there. So you can actually go back and track, oh, we had a spike in incidents in March and February. You know, which deployments, or were there lots of deployments during that time? Was there a spike in deployments as well? If not, you can dive into the root causes of, you know, incidents correlated to different deployments. And then this is kind of an example of an overall service dashboard. We have a few different versions of this. We have for service operations leaders, service operations teams, and service leaders. But you can pull all of this together with external connections. So this is just, you know, an example of the various porridge that you can, porridge or hot pot that you can make with the different data sources. So JSM, Jira Software, AWS, Snowflake. You can look at system availability, deployments, incidents, even security issues that are coming in through potentially Sneak or somewhere else, and map it all to expenses for different infrastructure costs. The possibilities are endless, really, when it comes to creating your own dashboard. And the more use cases we get from customers like you, we're going to add to our template dashboards over time. And I'll pass it over to Vincent to talk a little bit about the future.
Thank you. Thanks, Sid. So right around the corner in the next quarter, we'll have third-party data from our open DevOps API that we mentioned earlier to bring the tools data in from several dozen of the top tools you use in your software tool chains into Atlassian Analytics. And then we're also going to be working to include data from marketplace partners in the coming year. And on top, we also called out earlier, we're bringing in data export capabilities this summer so that you can have the data accessible outside of Atlassian. Having all the data clean and in one place is a big leap forward, but still only one piece of the puzzle. To stitch together a view of all the data that maps the actual workflows that drives your teams, we need to build a powerful foundation that connects all the data running through our tools from all the tools that your teams are using. In data parlance, we need to create a logical view of the physical data being generated from this open tool chain. There's really 4 different types of, objects to have. Firstly, you have your goals. These are the sort of things that you set in your organization. So your OKRs, et cetera, what do your organization really believe in? Then you have your teams. Like, who are the people actually working on things that tie to those goals? The teams of teams, the departments, et cetera, that comes into it. Then you have your work. Those are the actual work pieces itself. Like what are the actual things people are doing? And lastly, you have your assets. This can be many things, right? You can have your microservices as a type of asset. But if you think about other teams and the work they do, they also touches on different assets as well. Think of your design document. That itself is an asset. So it's important to tie all these things together into the connected data model. So these four nouns are types that expand into quite a critical relationship with each other, sometimes with hierarchy, that we can use them to build an opinionated graph of how this all fits together. They're all mapped via APIs to the physical data from all the tools in the ecosystem powered by our platform. So with this opinionated data model in Atlassian, we can create the most complete view of how all the digital asset lifecycles across the teams come together. And most importantly, we can do this up and down your organization through the hierarchy as well. So why is this so groundbreaking and so important? Maybe it's hard to understand why you need this logical view. So let's dive into an example of something we face ourselves internally in Atlassian. So one of the challenges we have as Atlassian as we scale to over 10,000 employees is that rolling up a company-wide work is quite complicated. And knowing actually where your resources spent across all your 10,000 employees is really tough. And not just knowing from an organization structure point of view, but from a work structure point of view, is critical in how you allocate your resources across the board. HR systems we use only tend to give you one side of the view. It gives you the organization view. But to create the work view, you actually need a mapping of your teams from the HR system to the projects that the team is working on. So in Atlassian with the Teams object, which we now adopted across Atlas and our Jira products and coming soon to many of our other products, we can actually start to make this logical connection between these teams and the work they're doing that changes quite dynamically day to day. So tying this work back to key results contribute to the team's goal or the company level OKRs, ensure that your leadership team have the confidence that people are working on the most important things. And it's super important these days, especially resources so scarce across the board. So each of these nouns we have is accessible, and we can grow them to include more use cases and products over time that can fit into the organization and the tools that you want to use. Let's talk a little bit about the power of how this connected data model actually comes together for the user experience, the end user. So if you're stepping back a little bit, the Atlassian Cloud Platform enables us to grow our product suite. And we largely group them into three main markets. The first one is our Agile and DevOps market, which helps software teams ideate, make, and operate software while connecting to work to the overall company strategy. Then the next market, which is my favorite because it's my market, is the IT Service Management market, which helps teams deliver the high-velocity service and operations to both your internal and external customers, however they want to engage with your service teams. And lastly, we also have our work management market, which empowers all teams within an organization to plan, track, and communicate and collaborate across people and teams across the organization. So teams at every level can choose the tool that makes sense for them and the digital jobs they're trying to accomplish. We don't enforce different tools for different things. But the power of the platform comes together when we unify these workflows across the teams. You can picture this connected data approach spanning our entire portfolio of solutions over time. Each type and level of team in your organization can leverage this unifying data model to understand the team, the work, and the operational health. Whether it's a DevOps team in Compass trying to manage critical service, or an IT team in Jira Service Management managing operations, or even a finance team in Jira Work Management doing a finance project. When these teams come together and communicate via Atlas, regardless of the tools they're using to plan and execute the work, they have a common language in how they set goals and actually understand the teams they work with to get this work out. Meanwhile, the leaders at the top level can actually have an overall view of the organization and the outcomes. But the important thing is not just the dashboard up the top, but they can actually drill down into it and to track the output and understand the resource allocation back down to like a team level and a work level as well. And you can start to see how this connected data model is really a key missing piece of the puzzle and really the special sauce that connects your enterprise. It's all about enabling teams to work with autonomy to innovate and operate in ways that work best for them, and for those teams to be aligned towards a common mission. And for business-wise, you'll see quality and speed to market improve because teams are connected, collaborations are more streamlined, and lastly, decision-making is actually backed by actual connected data. So from myself, Sid, Amanda, and a digital Jason, thank you very much for turning up to this talk. I guess we'll open the floor up to questions, and Jeremy back there will be running around with a mic. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one note, if you're using Atlassian Analytics, check out the support documentation. Also on our YouTube channel, there are a series of videos on how to get started. So the time it takes to watch one episode of Succession, you could learn everything about Atlassian Analytics.
Did you say this comes automatic if you're an enterprise subscription?
Yes, so it's part of the enterprise package. So yeah, it'll be there in the enterprise plan.
How do you get to it?
I think on the app switcher, there's one called Atlassian Analytics. For now, have a new lozenge next to it. So that's the entry point to get into the interface you saw that we were demoing earlier.
Do you have any plan to open analytics for premium customer?
Do we have plans to open it to premium customers?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Been getting that a lot this week. Yes, there are a lot of, basically, we have a lot of things working in terms of moving into premium in various ways. I think the general thinking that we have right now is that Atlassian Analytics, the way it exists today, as this like single platform for visualization, for querying, for blending data, we're still going to continue having that for cloud enterprise customers. But the way that you use those dashboards and those reports, we're looking into having those show up within individual product reporting. So if you go to Jira dashboards, for example, as you may have known, they've kind of been very similar for the last multiple years. You'll see that Atlassian Analytics dashboards and reports and widgets and gadgets will kind of replace those over time. But the timeline for that is probably 9 to 12 months. We're looking at potentially an EAP sooner, so if you're interested, we'd love to connect around then.
And now add to that as well, the Atlassian Analytics interface today may only be enterprise only, but the data lake and the connected data part of what we chatted about, it's across all our products, no matter what edition you're in. And you start to see capabilities that we're building, leveraging that connected data model. So you start to see improvements in all these areas that's actually powered by this connected data. So we're not gating connected data to enterprise only.
So I actually have two questions based on that question on the premium. So we're premium and we're trying to get pricing on the enterprise. Is that something we can do while we're here? Because we haven't been able to get a response. And the second part of that is, do you have to go to enterprise Jira and Confluence? Or if you've got Jira Enterprise, so what is the relationship there? So,
yeah, sorry.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the first part. Did you say you wanted to get pricing?
So we've put in a request to get to understand what the billing difference is for enterprise versus premium.
Yep.
But I haven't heard back yet. So is there somebody here at Teams that we could talk to, or how do we find that out?
Yeah, there's definitely people you could talk to here. I don't know if Jeremy, you know?
Yeah, we can connect you with our teammates at the Jira Service Management booth. I can find someone that can get the pricing for you, yeah.
And then to your other question, you don't need enterprise for more than one of the products. So if you have Jira Service Management Enterprise, for example, you get data that you can query and use in Atlassian Analytics across other products that are in the data lake.
I have a multi-part technical question. So there are going to be some gaps in the data for analysis based on entry, right? So Sydney office, if they're not in the Sydney office or they misspell the Sydney office, that's fine. You can use data best practices to bridge those gaps. But what language is a SQL query in? Is it going to be Postgres or T-SQL? Are we going to have direct access to that on the back end? Because I am a data analyst. So I want to know, how I'm going to be able to access those tables directly other than just the UI that you've put over it. Are we going to have that capability or not? So is the language then behind the UI?
So there's two parts. So I think what we've shown you from the UI, it's like the UI way of writing a SQL query. There is a SQL query writer. So if you're actually better at just typing it out, there is that option there. And then on top of that, you can export data option coming soon, I think also allows you to export to other tools outside of Atlassian interface to a tool that you may be familiar with. So you have the data there and you can query it in the way you want it as well.
Is it PostgreSQL or T-SQL that you guys
I think it's,
I'm not entirely sure.
I'm not entirely sure
that,
personally. I think it's Postgres.
Yeah, potentially. But we'll find out. Yep. No, all good.
Jeremy, I think there's a question back there as well.
I just have a quick question. One is you said that you can bring in the data from outside other like Snowflake or whatever, right? Other apps. But also when you say export, do you plan to publish connectors to like Tableau or some other tools that I want to use outside of Atlassian?
Yeah, I think that's the idea of our export option. It's really like you're not exporting the Atlassian, you're exporting the data from the data lake into tools like Tableau. And then potentially you can combine with other data as well.
Like Power BI, I can use.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea of that capability.
And sharing is going to be, even non-Atlassian users can look at the data, like when they say share the dashboard.
The shared dashboard, the idea is that you can,
Well, an Atlassian user would need, you need access to Atlassian to view the dashboards. Then there's various permissioning levels for an org admin, whether it's like view, edit, manage.
I'm aware of that.
I mean, there are some other things. So like we can embed dashboards, as Amanda showed, into Confluence. So now that Confluence has those like guest permissions, like you can share out Confluence pages with those dashboards to people. So,
Jeremy, there's a few questions at the back.
Sorry, I have one more about the export, and that was a good point, sir. So when you say export, do you mean a flat file rather than an actual live Tableau connection? Because you can have two with Tableau, the same with Power BI. I can have Power BI data sets, or I can have that live connection back to the data lake. Or would it be a flat file export that then I would have to update?
Yeah, so it's not a direct connection to like specific BI tools. Like it won't be like a connector to Tableau or Power BI. It's like the way we have import connections from Snowflake, et cetera, we won't have that as an export capability. The shape it takes is still being worked out.
Right.
But it's literally being worked out like these weeks, so I can share some more stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, do you have any update on when Sprint data is going to be available in the data lake?
When?
Sprint data?
Sprint data, do you?
We've been asking for it for like a year in the EAP, and at first it was supposed to be Q3 of last year, and then it was going to be Q1 of this year, and we still aren't seeing it anywhere, so.
Yeah, so we have this Jira issue service. That's what we're trying to collate into one place, and that's also why we've taken a little while to get to GA, because we're kind of like making sure that all the data from Jira is flowing into the same place to then be able to take to Atlassian Analytics. I don't have a timeline for you, but I know that now that we're GA, it's like in the works. So if you have time to stop by the platform Cloud Enterprise booth, someone will there, like more technical, will have that answer. But I can get back to you.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Hi, first of all, I think it was a great presentation. There's a lot of cool things. I have a two-part question. Maybe the first one will change the second one. Is this available for data center? Can I take my data from data center and push it into analytics?
No, it's something that we have been looking into, like data center data into the data lake in some form. There is a workaround that you can do, depending on your security practices, is if you can get your data center data into like an on-prem data storage area, then we can potentially connect to that as a connector and then bring it in. So it's kind of like a out and then back in.
Back, sure.
Yeah, but
is that something I can create a support ticket and try to work with?
Yeah.
We're not in EAP, we're enterprise customers, but. Yeah.
That's something you can connect to. I think the question is kind of like that. You have to open up that data destination to have us access behind the firewall. So if that's something that is like not narrow enough for you, that like endpoint, then that might be an issue, but open up a support ticket and definitely like, yeah.
Yeah, the second part of that question was, is the data model itself visible? Can I just look at the data model and say, okay, here's the data model. Maybe if we cannot go into analytics, at least we can organize our data like in that fashion. So tomorrow it's easier for us to jump in.
Like the schema?
The schema.
Yeah. It's visible in the sense that it's all in our support documentation, so you can download some of that and get a sense of like whether it's assets or JSM or JSW, how we structure it. Yeah, so you can do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
So my question is about future. How would this integrate with Atlassian Intelligence and bringing in what that information discovers into analytics?
Yeah, so I think there's it's definitely a very interesting area of Atlassian Intelligence, a lot of exciting things happening. One of the things we're doing with Atlassian Intelligence, with Atlassian Analytics, is really trying to empower customers to be able to utilize Atlassian Analytics easier. So I think yesterday in the keynote, they sort of talked about, hey, you can rather than needing to know how to write a SQL query or even needing to know how to use the UI, you can just in layman's term, like type in what you want and then Atlassian Intelligence generate the SQL to do the query. So I think that's one area we're looking to infuse Atlassian Analytics into this. I think other than that, it's there's obviously like conceptually, like there's the making it easier to actually generate insights part, which you saw in the keynote. Then there's a lot of other stuff we're exploring, and again, future. But you know, whenever you have a data analytics tool, you want kind of recommendations, and you want kind of like anomaly detection, things like that. So there's like the concept of finding the insights for you and then surfacing them in some way. And obviously, because we have Confluence and other notification type of software, surfacing them in that way. The other is, if you're creating a chart and you're creating an insight, like for service management, for example, letting you know, hey, a lot of people who look at this dashboard actually also look at this chart or add this chart to this dashboard. So just kind of beefing up like what you should be looking at. But again, the way that we structure how we implement the different intelligence stuff and when we do it depends on kind of feedback, yeah. Hopefully that helps.
I have a couple questions. The first one is about the Jira dashboard. Are you planning, is that, you mentioned some like maybe replaced eventually with analytics, the Jira dashboard?
Yeah, it's more that we, over the last year in the open beta for analytics, we've kind of, I wouldn't say replace, I just say that like we've kind of replicated a lot of the functionality that people have been using in Jira for Jira dashboards. There's just a few things like connecting to different widgets and gadgets that are not in analytics. So over the next year or so, like that's one of the big projects is instead of having the old Jira reporting and dashboards, it's going to be replaced by like the same type of reporting, but more powered by analytics. So you get the same customization and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the other benefit of the goal of analytics, replacing that, is pulling in all those other tools. So getting the connection to your IT tools if you're using Jira Software, and vice versa, and then eventually being able to pull in the third-party data as well.
Cool. So the second question is, I'm from federal government agency, so everything software-based, we have to be FedRAMP compliant. So where's the status? From my understanding, all those things Atlassian Cloud, but you're still working on the FedRAMP thing. So I'm wondering what's the status of that?
Yeah, so I think across Atlassian, we're probably from the announcement yesterday, I think we're in the works for FedRAMP. So we're trying to get FedRAMP certification across the board. So I think today what you've seen here, not FedRAMP compliant, not yet, but we're working towards that.
Do you have a timeline yet?
I think I have a timeline.
Not yet, but one of the main things we're focusing on is like a lot of the more enterprise-focused compliance, so like including data residency and FedRAMP.
Yeah.
And once we have a timeline, we'll publish it on the pages and share.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we will, if you have any other questions, just feel free to come up to the stage afterwards, and we can get them answered for you.
Does Align data get natively brought into it as well?
That's, I'm so glad you asked that. This is one of the things I'm more excited about. Kind of. So if you have enterprise insights, we're developing an enterprise insights connector. So in the next 2 to 3 months, you'll see that. And you can bring in that data that's like beyond Jira Software data that you're probably using. So like goals, programs, strategies. And so I don't know if I showed you a flow metrics dashboard, but we have a flow metrics dashboard, for example, in analytics right now, but it just pulls in team and project level from Jira Software. Once you get align data and EI data in there, you'll get like OKR program goal data too.
We were thinking more like burn-ups with estimates and actuals to show risk for commitment dates.
We are building, so we're building like a few template dashboards. I'm not entirely sure if those metrics are part of those templates, but if there are specific metrics that you want, we're still building them, so we can add them to the thing.
Yeah, just as long as we get access to the fields, because if we have the data, then we can visualize it.
Okay.
Thanks.